Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. It is only one of the best drafts, genuinely one of the best drafts of the year. It is the Fantasy Pros Championship Hard Way draft. And Terp, we call it the Hard Way. First off, I got to introduce myself. I'm your host, Aidan Liquorie. I'm just so excited about the draft. My co-host, as always, Dave Terpoilli. We're covering the Fantasy Pros Hard Way draft. As I had said, it's called the Hard Way because this is generally the hardest way to win $1 million. You have former champions. You have renowned experts. You have the best of the best in high-stakes fantasy all in this one draft room. Here, might as well, I'll show you guys what I mean by this. Looking at our draft here, just off the top, we're going to run through because the draft is already underway. Me and Terp want to cover that. Abib Agbatoba, back-to-back champion 2019-2020 in the FFPC $350 championship. Dan Williamson was just on our best ball stream last week. He's drafting with Bradley Stalder, their analyst over at Player Profiler. Also at Player Profiler out of the 3-spot, Theo Gringer. With Sharp Football Analysis, it's Todd Burrows. Established the runs, John Daigle is out of the 5-spot. The Go Bills trio, you guys know them as 2-time FFPC main event champions, are out of the 6th spot. Deep End Fantasy's Mike Schopp and Adam Krautwurst are out of the 7th spot. Austin Martin, a known high-stakes dynasty expert, and a 2020 playoff challenge champion in the 8th spot. Noah Riddell, a multi-league winner. Fantasy Mojo himself, Darren Armani, Dave Smatic from Sports Grid, and then David Hubbard, a high-stakes legend, former main event champion, and Mark Garcia from One Week Season. That's our draft. Those are the names. Terp, what's it like drafting in an event like this? It's essentially an event. These are, as I said, the best of the best. These are the top players in fantasy. Do you adjust your board at all? Is it just, or
if you see these guys in your draft, you run the other way? I mean, this is the best of the best. This is some of the top owners. I mean, we got defending champs, we got dynasty champs, we got playoff challenge champs, we got some of the best ball players out there right now. We have a player profile gurus all over the place. I mean, this is the best of the best, and this is definitely a draft where if you're just starting to look at fantasy football, this is the one you take a look at and you say, hey, these are where these guys could be going, down the road, and this is where I have to get them if I want them. As you see with Breece Hall going number 1 overall, we talked about this in the pregame. I was just waiting for a little bit of a surprise. It's not that crazy because Breece Hall is going pretty high in draft so far, but clearly, the owner loved him and they took him number 1 overall and a little splash to start the draft.
Yeah, so, I mean, me and Turk can talk about how great this draft is and the type of names. Some of those names will be joining us live on stream throughout tonight's show. I think at around 8:15, we're going to get our first guest, and they're going to be discussing live as they draft. But, I mean, our first best ball coverage, which was last week, we saw Garrett Wilson go 2nd overall, which is a shock. Not as big of a shock, but still. Abib Agbatoba, Breece Hall, 1st overall. I mean, this is go get your guy time, as we had said, but I mean, still a little bit surprising to see him go over Christian McCaffrey.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? I mean, so you and me
I think those top 3 guys are just clearly above everybody else, in my opinion. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is close, I guess you could say, but I don't really feel like there's any, major separation. Obviously, McCaffrey had the year last year that, set him apart, but it's a new year. He's a year older. A lot of people thought there was a possibility he fell off the cliff last year, and he didn't. He pretty much stomped a mud hole in everybody who tried to fade him. So, I mean, Breece Hall with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he could easily be the number 1 overall player this year. You saw the flashes last year. He's a beast in the fantasy playoffs. So, I like the pick. I'm very high on Breece Hall, and I don't mind it at all.
I mean, I think you and me are both huge Breece Hall guys. Clearly a bit is as well. So, I mean, it's of those 3, I think, as you had said, you've seen each of those 3 of Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb go first. So it's not ultra surprising, but still, I mean, if you're going to stray from ADP and trust your gut, this is the draft to do it. Terp, we're looking right here in this 2nd round already. We're seeing obviously a quick tight end run. What are your thoughts on kind of this top 4 that has emerged? We talked about Dalton Kincaid a lot on our best ball, how we're both kind of a little lower. Excuse me, you and Dan Williamson were both a little lower on him than consensus, at least relative to ADP. But what are your thoughts on these early tight ends? If you're kind of staking claim in one, who would it be out of this kind of top 4 that has emerged?
I mean, I like Sam Laporta. He'll probably be my one right now. Trey McBride, very close. I also like Kelsey and Kincaid. It would be my fourth on this list right now. I just feel like, the three that I mentioned first, a little bit more safer with the same ceiling. Kincaid has a lot more, paths to not pay off his ADP. I also like Mark Andrews behind him. You're seeing a definite run here. You're seeing nobody care about running backs. Jonathan Taylor, getting drafted. Nobody took Saquon Barkley yet, which is very surprising. And then just a crazy tight end run right here. So this is different because this is not a best ball league for people that are watching. This is a league where you have to put a lineup in every week. You have to pick starters. So it's a little bit different of a drafting format. Stacks aren't that important. So getting a big time tight end, as you could see, is very important in this format, especially with these guys.
Yeah, just to reaffirm for all those watching, this is a draft within the Fantasy Pros Championship. You yourself can draft in this contest. There's $1 million on the line. This is just the Hard Way League where it is 12 of the best. And again, it gets its name because it's truly the hardest way to win in this contest. Not only are you competing for that $1 million grand prize, you're also competing against 11 other owners who happen to be some of the best in the industry. And before I forget, new users, if you use code U225 at checkout, you get $25 off your first team. So be sure to use
that free money when you can.
If you're playing in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Terp, any other surprises to you? Just look at this other board because these are, as we said, these are all 12 GMs essentially who have full trust in their rankings and their processes. They don't tailor to ADP. They don't follow anybody else's rankings. This is all them. So I think in a way, to us, maybe could be some surprises here and there, but to them, it's not surprising anyway. They have a reasoning, a rationale behind it. Obviously, Briscoe is at number one, jumps a little in ADP. Go get your guy time. Any other surprises for you through these first two rounds? Or you think it's?
I wouldn't say any surprises. Saquon Barkley, we just talked about falling as far as he has. I mean, clearly, if you're drafting at the tail end of a draft like this, you have to get receivers because the chances of these top-notch guys falling back. So I like what Team 12 did. Taking Wilson, taking Harrison. Obviously, London was probably in consideration. But no real surprises. I mean, my first surprise would probably be Kyren Williams. He's kind of been like the darling fade of the offseason so far. So it's definitely interesting to see him going a little bit higher than I thought he would, especially, with some very top-notch receivers still on the board. So that's definitely something to watch. Besides that, nothing really. I mean, the tight end run, Mark Andrews, going right around where he should go, but he's also after this a tier jump. I mean, after Andrews kind of falls off a little bit. So I think those top five are a little bit above everybody else right now, no matter how you rank them. And then after that, it kind of falls off. So you should see a little bit of quiet time here for tight ends for maybe a round. But nothing really outside the box crazy. I mean, Saquon Barkley is the only thing that really stands out to me.
Kyren Williams, right, goes at the 212 here. Has kind of some foot issues. They drafted Blake Corum. What do you make of Kyren Williams now? Obviously had the out of nowhere year. Obviously his ADP last season, probably around mid-August, you started to see it creep up, and he kind of settled in kind of rounds 10 through 12 last year. So it's still arguably the biggest steal of drafts last year was Kyren Williams, him or Puka. But I mean, slowly losing a little steam since the Fantasy Pros Championship opened up before the NFL draft. So what do you make of Kyren Williams? There's competition there now. There was injury issues last year. There's now injury issues going into the season. Where are you at on Kyren Williams?
He'll be a fade for me. I mean, foot issues, which we don't know how serious they are, but his injury history definitely worries me. The coach clearly liked Blake Corum, brought him in. I think he's definitely going to take some work away from Kyren Williams. He's definitely a guy that is not going to be high, especially not where he's getting drafted. He's probably going to be a fade for me. But the thing is with Kyren Williams is everybody, this year is trying to find the Kyren Williams, trying to find the Puka Nacua. That's the popular, question everybody's asking is who is that guy this year? So, I mean, when clearly he burst on the scene, he was a fantasy football darling. Nobody really could, nobody going into the year loved either one of those two players. Yeah, of course, they got drafted late and they worked out, but, Kyren Williams to me has just a lot of issues that I'm probably going to steer clear of as of right now.
So Dan Williamson is in the draft. He's in our chat, and he is talking about his draft. He's saying the age cliff is at the two hole. So what do you kind of make of him and friend of the show, Bradley Stats, start kind of going against the grain in some fantasy owners' eyes and kind of hammering some aging players, but superstars nonetheless? Christian McCaffrey, Devontae Adams, and Derrick Henry. What do you make of that start?
Very interesting. I mean, I expected Brandon Ayuk at that slot. I think it made a little bit more sense over Henry. I know Dan loves Henry, as we took him in our best ball draft on our coverage last. So we know these guys are very high on Derrick Henry. Baltimore should take a little bit of the goal line work away from Lamar. He has massive upside, scoring touchdowns. And again, this is not a best ball thing. So these guys are going to be having to start these guys every week. So you're telling me you get a chance to start McCaffrey and Henry every week? That's a good proposition to have. Devontae Adams has some questions, offensive coordinator questions, quarterback questions. But the good thing about Devontae Adams is he's not going to sit there and not get targets. That guy's going to force his way to get 10-plus targets a game. So don't mind that pick at all. Would have preferred Ayuk over Henry, but to each their own. I mean, their team's a little old, but still very good so far.
I'm trying to get up the ADP here for Kyle Pitts, because we talked about him on our thing. He's been going, at that 3-4 turn. He goes here at the 305. We had kind of mentioned, hey, there was just a massive tight end run there in the second round, and we're like, man, we might not see a tight end there for a little bit. But, I mean, it only lasted a couple picks before Kyle Pitts gets swooped up there. John Daigle in the 5 spot. What are you making about that start? You have Tyreek Hill, obviously just a stud last year. Chris Olave, a little underwhelming relative to some of the steamed up expectations.
Very underwhelming how he got steamed up last year.
Quarterback play, probably the biggest culprit of that. I don't think you can really blame Olave.
Offensive coordinator issues.
Yeah, most unrealized air yards. And then obviously Kyle Pitts, who the last 2 years has probably been the most underwhelming player in fantasy. What do you make of that start? Taking kind of, I wouldn't say obviously 2 flyers, but you're banking on 2 of those guys hopefully finally meeting expectations after having them for a couple of years.
The rise of Kyle Pitts is not done. Everybody is on Kyle Pitts this year. I might be one of the only people who are not sky high on him, but it's hard not to be on Kyle Pitts this year. You've seen the last couple of years with the disaster known as Arthur Smith. We're not going to try to get in on him tonight. I try to avoid him on shows, but new quarterback, Kirk Cousins, likes to throw to the tight end. Clearly the talent's there. He's been injured, but I mean, the sky's the limit with the talent. Coming out of college, he was the next tight end, the next stud, the next star. So, in my opinion, I think Kyle Pitts is going to get up into the second round by the time we draft in Vegas, because the hype is not going to stop. I mean, this guy has all the tools behind Drake London. He could easily be the number 1 target on that team. So it's really hard not to like what you see out of Kyle Pitts this year. And like I said, I don't mind the pick. You're starting to get a little dark at tight end. Tight end falls off here really quickly. You're getting another 2-3 guys that are going to be coming off here soon. After that, they kind of all look the same. I mean, obviously there's some guys that, in personal opinion will separate, but it's definitely an area where if you don't have a tight end yet, there's a couple guys that you're going to see come off the board here that you're going to like. But like I said, Kyle Pitts, it's not done. He's going to be up in the second round by the time we draft in Vegas, because people are going to be fearful that he's not going to make it back to him. So he makes one flash play in the preseason. I could easily sit and see him getting up there in the Kincaid, Olave, Mark Andrews range.
Terp, I think it's time to get our first guest in here. He is the director of content for Player Profiler. You can follow him at the OG Fantasy on Twitter. Theo Gringer, drafting out of the 3 spot tonight, has already taken CeeDee Lamb, Saquon Barkley, and Devon Achane. Theo, thank you for joining the show.
Guys, we're back. We're doing it again. You guys always get me on in like the tilting rounds, so hopefully I don't tilt too hard.
What could you be tilting your start so far? I mean, you didn't think Barkley was coming down to you. No, I know you're probably not the highest Saquon Barkley fan, but still, I mean, he fell.
210 Saquon. I wanted to come out of these, the first 3 rounds with a running back, a hammer. I figured it was going to be Achane or possibly ETN at that 303. I thought I would get one of the tight ends potentially, but when they got steamed off, I was like, I don't feel like I'm catching a grenade, Terp. A lot of times you see these guys just fading, in this format where you're going to see like a bunch of the old guys get faded. I feel like I'm all right. Like Saquon's got huge touchdown equity.
1,000%.
The guy could score 15 touchdowns this year. We're not going to blink. So I feel pretty good about that. And then the 8-chain pick was a little tilting. I feel really good about having a strong RB2. Last year, I had like two running backs in the first 3 rounds. With this group, you can sometimes find some running back values because people go wide receiver crazy. And I might kind of eat my own words when some of these guys go off the board. I would have liked to have George Pickens there at the 410, but I like the start. CeeDee Lamb at 3, those 2 running backs. I mean, I think that could be 60 points per game if it all bounces right.
Did that tight end run surprise you at all in that second round?
The Mark Andrews pick surprised me a little bit. I thought that I would get access to one of those guys like Kincaid. I thought I would potentially get it, at the 209, or excuse me, the 210. I thought he would fall there to me. But I don't know. I think once the Kelsey pick went, it was like a trigger and everybody just went bang, bang, bang. The Pitts one, I heard what Terp was saying about Pitts. I agree with him. I think the steam is absolutely there. This is a tight end room right now. Evan Engram goes off the board there at the 401. So I don't know. I think I'm going to end up going into the tight end abyss like Terp was talking about, because I'm a little more worried about getting jammed right here at wide receiver. And having to wait on that 6-7 turn. I think there's
you don't want to get caught in that receiver run. I mean, that it could get ugly.
Yeah, 100%. There's some interesting guys here, though. Like I think there's a couple of wide receivers that I like. I have 2 queued up. Josh Allen would have absolutely been a consideration to me had he been there, but Go Bills takes him off the board. So that's a very good value for them. I can kind of talk freely. I don't know. Todd's probably listening in. I have 2 wide receivers in the queue right now.
You always got to worry about Todd. I mean, he's always listening. He'll say he's not listening, but there ain't no way he's not listening to you right now.
Todd's definitely creeping in the broadcast right now.
So we have a little delay, I'm sure, to try and help you out just a bit.
He's trying to peek in your queue somehow.
Okay, so DK. Todd took DK. I'm very high on Zay Flowers this year. I think this is a contrarian play slightly, where I think a lot of people are on the Mark Andrews ascension. I think Zay Flowers is going to catch a ton of passes, and I think he gives me some spike week potential as well. We saw it in the playoffs where he had the unfortunate fumble, but I mean, he looked really, really good in that game. I think I'm going to lean towards Zay here. Zay was one that I had circled as potentially a 5th rounder, but the way wide receiver is getting steamed, I could see the next 4 picks being wideouts. I'm going to lock in Zay, get my wide receiver 2, get a little balance.
He's definitely the guy that's probably been the quietest out of the 3. Henry's getting a lot of steam. Andrews is getting a lot of steam. Flowers is the one that's kind of standing a little bit under the radar, which I like too, because I like Flowers a lot. It's definitely interesting though, because I mean, Andrews obviously coming off an injury. Henry, he's getting up there in age. Obviously people, see his touchdown upside, but he still doesn't catch the ball. And Lamar's still there. So I like Flowers where he's getting drafted. I mean, I don't think he's ever going to get steamed up to where we're in danger territory. And I like the pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit ahead of ADP. If you're looking at Mojo,
draft,
but
ADP don't matter.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. It's completely out the window. So, and there goes Hurts. So the potential of I was considering Hurts maybe at the 503 just as an edge. I don't think that with this build, Lamar would be the worst pick. It would give me a little bit of correlation and a little bit of an edge since I'm going to potentially be losing out on tight end. If he's there, I'm going to consider him at the 503. I think that offense could score a ton of points.
Is your second receiver that you were considering still there? Or was it Metcalf?
It was Metcalf.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little more flat right now when you look at these guys available. I still might have to push one up. Let's see how these next couple picks go. There's, obviously, I don't think there's necessarily a tight end that I'm going to consider here at the 503. I think it really probably comes down to wide receiver, or I consider taking a quarterback and have a little bit of an edge there. There's a couple quarterbacks I like later, and but obviously with the Flowers pick, I'd have a little bit of correlation. So I think it's probably going to be
quarterback is so deep this year. It is. that's where the hard part comes in. I mean, you look at some of these guys, the Kyler Murrays, the Jaden Daniels, even Caleb Williams. You look at some of these guys that easily, Trevor Lawrence, that are way down there that easily could be top 10 quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, no, you're
It's
right
hard.
about that. It's really hard. This is flat. There's not much of an edge right here. There's a couple quarterbacks at the top that are very appealing, and then a couple of wide receivers that seem like more like structural picks. I have T. Higgins in the queue. I'm never super excited about him.
Never.
I don't know, Terp. This one for me, I mean, I've seen a couple of these quarterbacks fall this year. I like McLaurin a little bit, but I think this is a little bit early. I think I'm in a weird spot here.
Todd takes Lamar, I would think, if you don't.
I think I'm gonna go Lamar because I don't see an edge at wide receiver, and I like getting a little bit of correlation here with this group, and hopefully I get some Lamar, Zay Flowers like spike weeks. So I'm going Lamar. So it's a balanced start. It's not as wide receiver heavy as I would like. My hand's going to be a little bit forced in the next few rounds to kind of clean up wide receiver and obviously catch up at tight end. But Lamar, I think, gives me a real difference maker. And again, I get that correlation with Zay, and that's a guy who I'm super high on right now. So I don't hate it. I think I need my top three to be really, really good, but I think they are really, really good. And again, Saquon, I think that people are going to be a little bit annoyed that they didn't take him. That's a guy that I feel pretty strongly about, that he's going to score a ton of touchdowns this year. The only concern is, does he get enough receptions to kind of push himself into like top 5 running back range? Do they scheme him enough in Philly? I don't know. But I do think that offense is going to hum, and I think that Barkley doesn't go there.
The offense better hum. They got the talent to hum. I mean, probably
100%.
the most talented offense on paper.
It's the best
right
offense
now.
It's the best offense Barkley's ever played in.
Best offensive line. I mean, the receivers on the outside, Goddard, in the middle. They should have no issues with anything they want to do on offense. Kellen Moore, who's not, he's a creative, finally, play caller that they haven't had in a while. It makes a ton of sense. I mean, and they should be in some shootouts because the defense is not that good. I mean, they added some pieces in the draft, but I mean, the sky's the limit for the offense. They have no excuses this year, especially Kellen Moore. They should be top 3 offense in football this year. And if not, top 5 at the very worst. If not, it's a massive disappointment.
I got that quarterback run started for you guys, Terp.
You did.
After the Lamar one. So, and Todd was listening. There you go.
Richardson was always his pick. Theo, I have one more question for you.
He's never going to say it was Jackson. Come on.
No. But Richardson's
we know
great.
Todd. Todd's never going to be like.
Richardson's a money pick too. Like, I love Richardson this
100%.
year. I think
you have
I
one
think
stay on Richardson. Him getting
Richardson could be QB1 overall this year
easily.
But I think Lamar
run away with it.
Lamar's going to score a lot. I think that Ravens offense is going to hum. It was Monken's first year. Year 2, a lot of times those offensive coordinators take the next step. And I don't know. I feel like Baltimore's in a really, really good spot. What were you going to say, Aidan?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I had a question. You kind of talked about you're going to have to try and find some receivers late. We're drafting on May 30th. Training camps haven't really opened up. With how deep the rookie receiver class is, are you confident in, with that factored in, some of these rookies? And you're kind of, granted, this draft it may be a little different because everyone's so knowledgeable, but waiting on receivers and kind of taking some flyers late on some of these incoming rookies that you're confident that will kind of break out in training camp, and you're going to get them while their ADP is still kind of depressed before we know anything.
Well, I think that like last year, I was pretty aggressive with some of those young wide receivers. I got caught holding that Quentin Johnson bag, but I still took down the league.
What an ugly bag that was. Man.
That was an ugly bag. I tilted with you guys on that pick. That was like the ugliest wide receiver run. And I'm like, you know what? I got to take Quentin Johnson as like my wide receiver 5 to kind of make up for it. Last year, I had I think it was like Bijan, Tony Pollard start. I don't know how I won that league. But I had a couple. I had a little Trey McBride, some Kittle, and some DK Metcalf. Was really good in the playoffs. But yeah, I think, Aidan, you're right. I think that this is sort of you throw ADP out the window, you're going to start seeing some guys go sort of where they should go, as opposed to where they're currently going. And these early like May 350s that FFPC runs, you'll still see some ADP variance at like certain spots, and it bounces around a little bit. So I do think there's going to be a couple of people flag planting the rookies, especially at the wide receiver spot. And then I'll be interested to see where, Jonathan Brooks goes, where Trey Benson goes. There's a couple people in this room that like some of these rookies a lot, and you're going to see them maybe go a little bit ahead of ADP.
Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it as always. I'm sure we'll have you back on. Ladies and gentlemen, Theo Greminger.
Terp and I are dropping a best ball soon, guys. Look out.
Yes,
Look out.
Oh, that's going to get the people going there. Theo Greminger,
yeah.
Thank you, sir. Good luck for the rest of the draft.
Good luck, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Theo Greminger, ladies and gentlemen. Again, you can find all of his work at DOG Fantasy on Twitter and at Player Profiler. Terp, great as always. I'm saying I want it on the record. Anthony Richardson, if healthy, the Colts are going to win that division. That's my
one fear, and that's his health.
Dude, he feels like he's destined to get hurt. The way he plays, he gets rocked when he gets tackled.
If he can figure out a way to stay healthy, he's QB1 or very close to it. I don't see there being any other option, and we haven't seen a quarterback like that in a while. There's a list. So much.
There's a list of guys who, like, when they fall or get tackled, it's like it's the least graceful. They look like a bag of bricks falling. Mike Williams will forever be number one.
Mm-hmm.
Just does not know how to properly land. Anthony Richardson might be up there too. He gets thrown around. For a guy as big as he is, he just gets absolutely just torched sometimes. It's just brutal to watch as a fantasy owner. I had him last year. Terp, we were talking to Theo. Little QB run there one. Obviously, the Lamar Jackson.
Big QB
run. Obviously, Josh Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Anthony Richardson, Mahomes go in a very short span. Looking kind of at this fifth round, that Texans receiver room, obviously, they traded for Diggs. We talked about them before. We want to talk about it because the ADP is kind of settled, I would say, starting to settle in this draft, I think, is the most one I want to talk about. So Nico Collins signs the extension yesterday, I believe, or earlier this week. So they trade for Stephon Diggs. Tank Dell, obviously, off an injury, but an amazing rookie season before that. Nico Collins at the 310 today. Stephon Diggs at the 403. Mojo gets both of them. So I want to hear your thoughts on one, Mojo doubling up on Texas.
Well, he doesn't take CJ Stroud. I know he's not a big stack guy, but I know it's not best ball, so you don't have to. But it just seems like a negative to not take CJ Stroud when you have both those guys. You're going to start both of them, and it makes a ton of sense to draft both of them because that offense is going to be humming this year. And if the offense is humming, CJ Stroud's going to be getting those guys the ball. So I'm curious to hear his thoughts on that. I'm sure he'll call me out on Twitter, and he deserves to. But I want to know why he didn't take CJ Stroud. It just made so much sense, especially over Alvin Kamara.
Passes on Stroud for Kamara. So, Terp, again, I believe last time we talked, you were a Dell guy. I think we're both
still
it's still the cheapest now that the ADP is kind of set. I believe when we did the draft, it was right after Diggs got traded, so the ADP was still kind of adjusting. Collins 310, Diggs 403, Tank Dell 508. You're still taking Dell.
Yes.
Okay.
The reasoning is cheap, and I can see easily all three of those guys leading the team in all the categories. Obviously, Dell's not going to catch as many passes as the other two, you would think, but I don't know. Like CJ Stroud, I love the Texans, and I think the Texans are the best team in the division on paper, which means nothing. But 6th round CJ Stroud, when I can have Jaden Daniels or Kyler Murray or guys like that later, he doesn't really present the rushing upside. So if they ever get ahead in games, you're going to see a ton of Joe Mixon, who they paid a lot of money for a running back.
For no reason whatsoever.
Didn't have to do that, but they did it anyway. Dalton Schultz is still around there. CJ Stroud has to be perfect to pay off a 6th round ADP here for my thought. And this is being drafted by my guy, Austin. All respect to him. I know this is one of his first drafts, and he's probably watching the Timberwolves get beat tonight and watching Rudy Gobert be a trash bucket that he is and probably not paying attention. But I'll make sure I say something to him about the CJ Stroud pick when he could have waited a little longer and got some more of, my opinion, guys with higher upsides.
This is just, I will also, first, let's go this. Quick answer in the chat. They were asking in the chat, Mr. Biggs a lot. Both stay healthy. I'm assuming he means relative to ADP. Who would we rather have?
I saw that question.
Kyler or Anthony Richardson? I'm Anthony
Kyler.
Richardson because if he stays healthy, I think he's QB1. But oh, you're saying then just the difference.
I'm just saying baking in everything,
Okay.
all the potential outcomes. Kyler's cheaper.
Who would have thought? Dave Terpoilli, a Kyler Murray guy this year.
Kyler Murray guy. I wasn't a Bijan Robinson guy last year. I'm definitely a Bijan Robinson guy this year. I mean, I just drafted Derrick. I'm not a Derrick Henry guy this year, but I just drafted him with Dan, partners. I mean, sometimes you got to make tough decisions, and that's what's good about having a partner on some of these streams. You don't just stay in your own biases. But yeah, Kyler Murray is where he's being drafted. Top 5 quarterback is in the range of outcomes, and adding Marvin Harrison, adding Zay Jones, Michael Wilson's still there. Obviously, Trey McBride, healthy. I'm hearing good things in the offseason about his, work ethic, which was always a question. So all things considered, I'll take them both and have no worries whatsoever. They're 2 guys that I'm targeting in as many drafts as I can get them. But if you're saying all things considered, it's Kyler Murray.
Let's take a quick look at Team 6, the Go Bills trio, 2-time main event champions.
Staying on brand.
Taking 2 Bills. They go the Kincaid Allen stack. They start with Jamar Chase. Brandon Ayuk. Chat loved the Brandon Ayuk pick. I think one person was in there.
Love the Brandon Ayuk pick.
And then they go
Christian Watson pick too. Ooh, baby. I'm back.
We'll talk to Todd Burris is joining us later in the stream. We'll talk to him about the Christian Watson pick. I wanted to kind of mention Kenneth Walker's name. So Kenneth Walker is the Go Bills trio first running back. What are your kind of thoughts on the Seahawks backfield this year? And do you think Kenneth Walker, who had a really great start to the year, he slowed down a bit. He got a little banged up. But, I mean, Charbonnet never emerged like I think some people thought he would.
He had some flashes, but nothing of any consistency.
Is Kenneth Walker a value? Like, just before you go, I like if you're going to go kind of 0 RB and start looking in the 6th, 7th round, I think you can do far worse than Kenneth Walker as your first running back. I like the team build for them. So
100% agree. I mean, obviously new regime there, new coach, new offensive coordinator, all that stuff. So they don't owe anybody anything. And Kenneth Walker, that's where you worry. I mean, does Zach Charbonnet impress them enough to where they start giving him more work? But to me, if you're doing a 0 RB team exactly the way they're doing it, Kenneth Walker's a perfect guy to start with because value is at running back this year and quarterback. There's plenty of guys that you can wait on and get the receivers, the top-notch receivers early and tight end. And, every year it changes. Last year, quarterbacks got steamed up. This year, quarterbacks are getting steamed down. There's plenty of guys that you'd be happy starting your team with, even in a week long where you're starting a guy every week. So I like Kenneth Walker. He's a guy that I'll be targeting. And the good thing about it is he's quiet. He's not a guy that's going to ever get steamed up. So you can pretty much sit in where he's being drafted and get him pretty much around there anytime you want. He's never going to get above. There's never going to be, unless Charbonnet gets hurt, there's never going to be a time where Walker gets pushed up 2-3 rounds. Like some of these guys could possibly get pushed up. Like we look at some of the guys that are being drafted around, like Zamir White. If they don't add anybody, I can see getting moved up, getting steamed up by the time Vegas comes along. Aaron Jones, getting steamed up a little bit. James Cook, Rashad White, guys like that could get steamed up a little bit. But I don't see there ever being a path that Kenneth Walker gets steamed up, which is good because if you're starting a team with 0 running backs, I'll take him.
You know who's having a draft, Terp? David Hubbard and Mark Garcia. I think that they might have one of my favorite drafts so far.
The 12th slot is very difficult. People say they love it. It's very difficult to bob and weave because you're kind of just sitting there with no plan whatsoever and just seeing how the draft falls out. And the draft felt pretty damn good for them. I mean, they start off with 3 receivers, elite receivers. And we know my love for Evan Ingram. I think James Cook's being disrespected in drafts. He's a guy that could easily, within the range of possibilities, being a top 5 running back this year. You saw down the stretch, he was a monster. Can he hold up? Can he stay healthy? Will the Bills, give him all the work that he should? It's definitely possible. I would love to start a team in my running back room with James Cook. And Hollywood Brown, I mean, Xavier Worthy, a little banged up in camp already. So many questions surrounding Rashee Rice. Kelsey getting a year older. Mahomes. You're always going to see the training camp deep bombs to Hollywood Brown, which is going to get you all tanked up. And then taking Jonathan Brooks right there.
We like that pick?
Massive upside there. He's a guy that I need to deep dive a little bit more on.
Sure.
He's going to get steamed up. If he's healthy, he's going to get steamed up even more.
Camp and obviously come August. It's a very – Jonathan Brooks is one of the – wow. Hollywood and Rashi.
If you want Jonathan Brooks, get in a draft right now.
That's what, I think. Or, I mean, you could also there's also the possibility you could get screwed over and it starts on the pup and then he's
100%.
dropping.
But these guys who are savvy drafters are taking him now.
Yeah.
If he's healthy and just gets in it, he's going to move 2 rounds up. Yeah, obviously, if he opens on pup, he's going to fall down, but they're the risk you take. And it could be a risk if you're a 0 RB team like he is, drafting 12. I mean, what if he's 100%? That team is really good.
My thing with Jonathan Brooks is we said it on our shows in the past 2 years about various players. He's a guy, personally, I'm not drafting him, even if he's not starting on the pup, expecting much in those first 6 weeks, right?
You don't have to. He could be exactly what Brees Hall was.
Exactly. You always see it, and then it's going to start, the production's going to start coming mid-season as he really kind of rounds into form, and then he's going to hit really high gear by your hope is the fantasy playoffs, and then can be a real league winner. I think that's possible, especially with how Canales likes to run the ball.
Also,
what are your thoughts on the Rashi pick? Do you like that?
It's a perfect pick for a team like this.
Okay, so you like it within the build.
I'm never taking him in best ball. I can't say never, but it would have to be at the right value because he'll fall a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But in this type of format, they have their 4 receivers. They don't need Rice for a while. Rice can come back, get acclimated in the offense if he gets suspended a couple games, whatever. It doesn't hurt this team at all. Makes no risk. But let's just say Rice gets 4 games. He's back for playoffs. I mean, he's a guy that will differentiate yourself a lot because most teams aren't going to take him as their 5th receiver. He's going to be one of their 3rd or 4th receivers because they're going to need, he's going to get drafted higher than he probably should. This is the type of team that with Rice, no issues with this pick at all. I wouldn't do it if my structure wasn't like this. If my structure was like Theo's team, there's no way I could take Rice. I mean, it just doesn't make logical sense based off the structure because you can't just the first couple of weeks are important in these leagues. If you get far behind, you could be in a world of hurt.
I wanted to ask your thoughts. We kind of briefly discussed Kyler Murray, and you really like the value percents. He goes at QB7 to Mike Schopp and Adam Krautwurst. Mm-hmm. They doubled down on it with Trey Benson. What are your thoughts on maybe that? Is that a possibly sneaky stack right there? I mean, James Conner, sadly, is bound to get hurt. It's just in his, his formula. You're baking in at minimum 4 games miss. It's just what he does.
Yeah.
Trey Benson was one of the higher ranked backs, granted a weak class, but I mean, had some great flashes, more than flashes at Florida State. Was a great player at Florida State. And I think obviously we talked a lot of the running backs when draft day happened, NFL draft day. You would argue, I would say most of them probably lost their value. I think Brooks maybe rose a bit, say the same. Benson maybe stay the same, but I could see Benson actually his ADP start creeping up as we get closer.
James Conner is another year older. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of young talent on that offense. Benson, they drafted high. They expect clearly him to take that number 2 role and then maybe emerge as the season goes on. And that's a team with playoff aspirations. I mean, they have a ton of talent on offense with Harrison, Kyler, McBride, Jones. We talked about James Conner's no slouch, and then you add a young guy like Benson, who's it's going to take some time, just like any rookie running back. But he's a guy that could be a force in the fantasy playoffs. I mean, we always look for down the road a little bit. You always have to get there, but if you get there, he's the type of player that I want on my team because there's a great chance he's emerging by then, and then sky's the limit.
You know how we always do the all preseason hype team? Mm-hmm. Jameson Williams has already clinched a spot. He goes at the 8-11. I saw some Twitter stuff from you that you're buying in to Jameson Williams. We're doing that. We're doing that.
I'm not just buying in. I'm buying in. I'm going to be
Jameson Williams anonymous.
Jameson Williams. If I get hurt, I get hurt. I'm okay with it. Best ball, he's going to be one of my main targets. I have no fears in saying it. Will he ever get the Christian Watson love? No. I hope he's quiet. I hope he just stays healthy through the preseason. Don't do anything crazy like catching long touchdowns. I don't want to see any of that because by the time I draft in Vegas, I don't want Jameson Williams getting steamed up to the 6th round or 7th round or crazy stuff like that or even higher. But all things are positive so far. Stay healthy. Stretch them hamstrings. To me, he's the third target. He could easily be, big play, big scores. Exactly what I'm looking for in this range. So Jameson Williams, very, very nice.
Last 5 days in the Fantasy Pro Championship, an ADP of just also 908. So he goes about just under a round earlier than usual. Mm-hmm. The earliest he's gone in the format, the 612, the latest at the 1010. So, I mean, I would argue probably early on, he's the guy who's probably been rising the most. The two guys who I've heard the most about preseason, you were talking about when we had Theo on and we were discussing guys who had kind of been getting steam on the Ravens, how it's Henry, Lamar. Rashad Bateman is by far and away the guy who I've been hearing the most about, the most nonsense about. That's another all preseason hype team kind of guy. But Terp, I wanted to ask you real quickly, Team 9, Noah Riddell getting some love in the chat. That they're saying they love what he's doing.
Absolute beast.
So he starts off here. I want you to just kind of break down his team for us. He starts Puka Nacua, Drake London, Michael Pittman, and Mike Evans, 4 receivers to start. And then since then, he's been hammering running back with a receiver sprinkling. Rashad White, who I think you and me have both said, we love the value Rashad White presents. Although Bucky Irving,
there's a lot of people who are off him this year.
There's Bucky Irving getting some love. And one of the people who are off him might even be the Bucs coaching staff. I might have to read more into it. There's just some stuff about how he has to do this better and that better, and you're hearing a lot of love for Bucky Irving. So we'll see.
Bucky Irving.
Zamir White, Zach Moss, and then David Njoku. So talk about Team 9, Noah Riddell's draft going on and getting some love in the comment section.
No downside whatsoever to me. I mean, Puka is going to be the focal point of that offense. Obviously, Drake London, sky's the limit with Kirk Cousins, new offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith out of town. Pittman with Anthony Richardson. I mean, love that pick. Then you have Mike Evans. I mean, Baker Mayfield just force feeds him the ball. So there's really nothing to dislike there. I like Chris Godwin this year too, but Mike Evans is the guy that's going to get plenty of work. White, we just talked about. Njoku's a guy that if I'm waiting on tight end, this middle range, I like a lot. I mean, if Deshaun Watson can figure out how to play football again, Njoku and Amari Cooper could be very, very good fantasy picks that are just getting totally looked over right now. The rest of the running back room, I like Tony Pollard this year. He's not the first round pick and not the top overall player that I said he was going to be last year. He should be healthy. So like the pick there. Zamir White, also another guy that I'm pretty high on. They didn't add anybody that really worries me. If you like Alexander Madison, good for you because I don't care. I'm Chase Brown over Zach Moss, but overall, I don't mind the pick. He could have a couple issues, as his RB2 every week to make a decision on, which is a good problem to have. But overall, like the team, like the structure, plenty of quarterbacks left. Jaden Daniels, sweepstakes is still out there. There's plenty of teams that need a quarterback, and I think one of them are going to take it pretty soon. I think Team 12 will be a Jaden Daniels drafter. I'd be very surprised if they're not, but we'll see.
Quick question in the chat for us. It was, would you rather have Treylon Burks or Rashad Bateman? Which is the questions that the people are coming here for, Terp. They want
Treylon Burks, and it's not close.
I mean, the option is neither.
The option is probably neither, but
I think I'm buying it.
There's some positive press coming out of the Titans camp about Treylon Burks.
I mean, there's positive press coming out of Rashad Bateman. No, there's all the positive coming about Rashad Bateman, about the role he's going to have, and all. It's just it's all coach speak.
Did you listen to his press conference the other day? That didn't give me any positive.
It's all coach speak. It's all nonsense.
It is. I mean, it's so hard.
You talked about it with Levis, so I don't want to keep beating the nail we've been pounding that nail. But Brian Callahan, his stats and the they're going to throw the ball. They're going to put the ball in Levis's hands. I mean, obviously, that's why I'm buying into Ridley more and more. I mean,
I don't know
Levis
if I'm
already
going
has
to buy into Ridley. I feel like if the right one, falls at the right price, like DeAndre Hopkins would probably be the guy that I would lean. Just pricing. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins where did he go in this draft? Yeah, 7th round. DeAndre Hopkins, I'm perfectly fine with. Versus Calvin Ridley, where he went
6'11".
6'11". Yeah, I mean it's about the same, so it's not really that far off. I probably lean toward Hopkins if I had a pick. We know I like Will Levis, but the quarterback is so deep. I mean,
so are you surprised? Talking about quarterback, I'm just going to jump in. Team 12 does not go Jaden Daniels, but they do get your guy Jordan Love.
No worries. I mean, Jordan Love, I'll be happy. The worst part about quarterback this year is there's obviously going to be some pitfalls here. We know it happens every year. Last year, all the injuries that happened, you had were bobbing and weaving the position. But there's so many guys, and it's so hard to take Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson as early as they're going over some of these other guys. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do not to do it, because I just did it with Dan on the stream, but you could easily tell yourself a story where Jaden Daniels is up in that range next year, or Jordan Love, or not really Burrow because he doesn't run, but Kyler Murray. I mean, you saw what Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott was a monster last year. Yeah, I know he didn't do great down the stretch, but Dak Prescott they just throw the ball every time. I mean, they barely ran the ball at all. It was just chuck the ball up and let's go. And he's in the 7th round. Do you have any issues starting Dak Prescott as your starting quarterback? I mean, I personally don't. It's just hard.
I think you can wait until double-digit rounds this year for quarterback if you needed to and be
easily
completely fine.
This is definitely the year where tight ends are getting pushed up, quarterbacks are getting pushed down, running backs are getting pushed down. And it's really hard to bob and weave. Like you always say, like, hey, I want to do something different. Where you're taking 2 or 3 running backs early, it just puts you behind such the 8 ball at the position to where you're going to be good. Are you really confident in starting Tyler Lockett and Jameson Williams and Brian Thomas? Love the players. Nothing against the players, but in a league like this, it's not best ball. You can get away with it in best ball. In a league like this where you have to start guys every week, a guy like Tyler Lockett, you really pumped up to start him every week as your 3rd receiver. Nothing against the player, but it's just a different thought process in these leagues to where it seems like the way to go is to take the receivers early, take the tight end early, and just wait on the other 2 positions and just build your team that way, especially in these bigger entry contests.
Would you say, if I were to ask you who, like your favorite fantasy expert's favorite player this year, would the answer be Jaden Daniels?
Kyle Pitts is probably 1.
Okay.
If I had to go 2, it would probably be Jaden Daniels.
I'm not saying that in a bad way. I mean, there's every fantasy analyst expert I know, I follow everyone.
And that's the thing you got to watch early. I mean, especially like it's hard, like not to get caught up in every single person liking a guy. It's really hard. Like everybody's on one player. There's no guarantee that player is going to be a superstar or anything like that. Or going to, Jaden Daniels is going to be a 3rd round value in when he's getting drafted in the 10th. So you got to watch with that. I mean, because there's been plenty of guys that have been hyped up over the years. I mean, we just look at last year, Jahan Dotson, Christian Watson, keep going down the list of players that, Tony Pollard, guys like that who were hyped out of crazy and just totally flopped and ruined fantasy teams.
Yeah.
So
Daniels is obviously a bit different because he's the capital you're spending, but he is a guy who, I'm telling you, one big preseason game where he shows his legs, that ADP isn't staying in the double-digit rounds for long.
Best case scenario. What do you think best case scenario is for Jaden Daniels? He in his first preseason play breaks in 75-yard touchdown, throws a 75-yard touchdown to
the thing is, in these drafts, I think, like, let's just look at this draft. I think there's a conceivable chance he gets by Burrow and Love because it's just, he's the sexy new kid on the block, electric preseason showing. Everyone's going to buy into the wheels.
rushing upside.
And then I think you could get him around where like that Kyler Dak range.
Yep.
And it just depends on what draft you're in, but he might go like I think he could reach like QB 7, 8. He's going at QB 11 right now. I think his ceiling is probably that QB 7. I'll say is I think his ceiling.
I agree. It only takes. I mean, you look at there's plenty of guys in this range that Chase Brown is another guy preseason hype could get moved up.
My last thing I'll just say with Daniels is. And then we have a guest coming on. I don't want to leave him waiting. But my thing with Daniels is just at the ADP now, I'm fine with it. But if he moves up to QB 7, I think it's just too much of a risk. I think it's too much of an unknown and a guy who I think he's not a sure thing coming out of college. I think he has.
Don't forget that week 14 bye.
The week 14 bye. Don't get us started. We will get started.
Yeah.
Coming to us live in the draft out of the 7th spot tonight. Buffalo Sports Radio host of the Deep End Fantasy Football Contest, Mike Schopp. Sir, thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, having fun?
How we doing?
Oh, we have fun just watching you guys battle it out. I mean, I would not want to be in a draft like this.
This league is no joke.
Brutal.
How
are you feeling?
Right.
So you said you always do the 28 rounds, nothing in front of you. You said this is harder.
It is, except I should say I have a partner tonight who bailed on me in the bare knuckle a couple of years ago, to be fair. And I haven't won that thing. So who am I to say that's too easy or anything like that?
Last year was one of the first years I watched that, and you guys are all psychopaths. Absolute psychopaths.
You know what, Terp? I had the Eagles to my left. I picked the 102. I drew the ace, picked the 102. I got the Eagles guys to my left. There were like 5 of them shouting all night. It was like being in an Eagles game.
Yeah, those guys still are drinking.
Yeah, that's why I'm not going back.
I remember those guys have not stopped drinking. They literally.
It should be in like one of those game show soundproof booths where nobody can hear anybody.
I remember sitting there with the side with JD and just wow, like it's hard enough to pick with having nothing in front of you, let alone you got 5 guys just screaming in your ear.
I know
they won a lot of money on the Lions, so cool, but man, that's tough.
They did okay. I picked Gibbs after that game. And Gibbs dropped everything in that game, and I still wanted him.
Yeah.
And I went Hurts. I went Gibbs Hurts at the 2-3 turn in that draft. I'm sorry, we're not here to talk about that draft.
Okay.
That
we can talk about whatever you want.
I mean, Gibbs Hurts to me was like sort of the play, and then Goddard. I think in 3 years I might have finished 6th all 3 times. So the devil.
What are the odds of that? How you feel about your draft so far to the 7th spot? You start Jefferson, Trey McBride, Jalen Waddle, Cooper Kupp, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Kyler Murray. We were talking about your Kyler Murray and Trey Benson stack. We kind of like that as a sneaky little, because James Conner is bound to get hurt. Trey Benson, we love what we saw at Florida State. And Terp is all over Kyler Murray this year. And then you go Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams, and Nick Chubb. So just, I know you're about to be up. You can talk us through your pick, but just real quick, how are you feeling about your draft so far? Are you confident in it?
I'm happy. Adam's been helping me. I think what happened there was Adam wanted Jones in the 6th, and I wanted someone else, Jaden Reed. But we picked Jaden Reed the other night, so I gave him Aaron Jones. And after that, I felt like Murray could go at the turn, and with the Harrison team, and with no quarterbacks behind us except for Austin. So Murray, McBride, everybody in the industry is talking up Murray. Mm-hmm. And so Benson was sort of what was next after that. It was not the plan to get them both, but like a lot of people were excited about Kyler Murray and thought that it was right to sort of pay up for him. And then when having the 2 veteran running backs, Benson, I thought made sense in 8. And now we're, trying to get caught up at receiver after that.
Nick Chubb in the 11th round. When you're taking Nick Chubb, is that kind of purely a lottery ticket? We don't know where to get. Or are you kind of as a belief that he will contribute, especially kind of later in the year once that knee starts to kind of slowly work its way back to full health and he gets his legs under him?
I mean, who knows? I think worst case with this team, we do okay. And then we're talking every week about whether it's time to cut him. Mm-hmm. Like a Kodai Senga in baseball right now, you sort of wait and then you hope and then you sort of give up. there's a chance that Chubb is on the field by October or even sooner, potentially. And then there's so much to like about the Browns, then you might really love that. I'm almost done at running back here, but Adam is the captain now. So Brandon Cooks, he's still in the league?
I mean, there's nobody else there. I mean,
I know,
think about
right?
it. CeeDee Lamb, it's him, and then it's, Jalen Tolbert. They don't really have any. My guess is they had somebody, throughout the, preseason just to get a body in there, but there's really nobody else there. And we know the team likes to throw the ball, but not just going to turn into a running team. So Brandon Cooks, to me, is one of the best values. It's season long's a little tougher, but like in basketball right now, like he's a smash pick where he's getting drafted.
My question.
Well, hopefully he produces early and then we can start him at some point, I mean, maybe you wait all season to do that, but
yeah,
it's possible.
My question in the chat for you comes from Dom Gazzetti. He was wondering, all the way back to the first round, what was the rationale behind Justin Jefferson over Amon-Ra St. Brown? Was there any consideration, or was it always Jefferson if he fell to you at 7?
It was never going to be St. Brown over Jefferson. It could have been Garrett Wilson for us over St. Brown if the start was different, right? I mean, Breece Hall at 1, now it's a party. As soon as the first pick of the draft, Abib waits in like 58 seconds and pick. Was that an act? Did you talk to him? I don't know if you talked to him.
I was not a little bit surprised, but not really. I mean, he's getting steamed up. I mean, like you'd say, Kyler Murray, everybody's talking about. Yeah, I mean, Breece Hall's never coming back to you, so why not?
I mean, Jefferson is the best receiver in the league, and the coach is so passer friendly. If Mullins and Dobbs can do that, I can buy that Darnold and McCarthy, a first round pick, can do that, and that's their commitment. Nothing against St. Brown. I mean, he's fine. I'm lucky to have a lot of St. Brown in Dynasty and stuff, but
I also have a coaching staff that, I mean, Jefferson wants to get paid. He hasn't got paid yet, and they want to keep him there clearly. So you would think they did just force feed him the ball and keep him happy. So, I mean, I think Jefferson hate, in draft so far is a little bit, weird to me. I mean, he's still going to get 1 million targets and he's still going to produce. And if for whatever reason he doesn't, the coaching staff should be fired on the spot because he's their best player by a landslide. And why not get your best player the ball a ton? So to me, getting drafted where he's getting drafted is, a little bit weird because he should be going higher.
I know. He's undeniable. I mean, the first one this is my third FPC. The first one I did with my friend Mike, I picked him third, 103. Like for me, he was wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
So, that's fine. I think he's good as good. The coach, is going to throw the ball all the time, like I said. And okay, like I feel like there's less to worry about, even with the quarterback point. You want to try to figure out what are, even in this fine group, what are people drafting scared of? And with Jefferson, it's been the quarterback situation there, but first round draft capital, O'Connell, I'm fine with it.
I agree.
Another question about a receiver took there in the 3rd round. Signed an extension today, Jalen Waddle. Do you sometimes look for, just in all your drafts, not even this one, the guys who, I mean, Jalen Waddle at points last year was going mid-2nd round, kind of settled in that late 2nd round. You get him here in the kind of the mid-3rd. Do you sometimes look for guys who were incredibly hyped last year, have produced every year of their career, but maybe dropped a bit off of disappointing seasons, but not because of their poor play? I mean, Jalen Waddle was just really banged up last year, and then Tyreek Hill stole some of the thunder. Almost like you're buying the dip a bit. I mean, there's a reason he was getting drafted so early last year. That player is still there. He's in one of the most explosive offenses in football. So are you loving Jalen Waddle and kind of that mid to late 3rd round value that he's been going at?
I would say I like him a lot. Maybe not love, but I like him a lot. A lot of the things you said, I mean, the team has made the commitment to what Terp said earlier. Like, who else is there? It's OBJ. Like, okay. I mean,
Jonnu Smith.
I like that too, but they're going to want to feed Waddle. And so we know he's good, I think. We know the offense can be good, especially early in the season. We'll see what happens when it gets cold. That's the Buffalo in me probably talking there.
Yeah.
I wanted a receiver in that spot no matter what. And it would have been Waddle or DJ Moore for me there. We've drafted Pittman already. He's fine. Collins is in a little bit of a cluster with the different Houston guys. Fine. A lot of sort of even kind of options there. But I think Waddle can be as good or better than any of them.
Mike, I'm going to ask you one last question and let you get back to the draft. Just a general, I wanted to ask you, if you're staking your claim, you're planting a flag on one player this fantasy season, who is that guy?
Not just Bills?
No.
You can
You
know what? You know what? So you don't give away too much this early.
Hang on.
Which Bill receiver?
No, that is a good question.
If Kincaid counts, then I would pick
Does not
Kincaid,
count.
but it's a little bit cliche.
Does not count.
All right. Does MVS get drafted tonight?
I hope
Now he does. Now he might. You brought
Well,
up his name.
he's kind of bad, but the thing about him the Bills have like
You're
5
flat
slot
bag,
receivers.
You're
No.
flat.
Let me say it. Let me say it. The thing about him, big body, Davis left, of course Diggs left. I think he'll be on the field a lot. And I think Allen will have a compulsion. They're calling it Allen's offense. He's got to throw the ball deep. I think that will have a chance to work. I mean, Shakir is fine. The NFL didn't want him. Samuel was fine. He's never been on a good team. Kincaid should call himself a receiver ASAP so he can get paid like these other guys. But even though he plays slot 80% or whatever it is, they call him a tight end for the money. Who am I forgetting? I mean, I think
Terp is shocked right now.
MVS will be on the field. I think he'll be on the field because he has a skill set that nobody else on that team has.
You are never drafting MVS in a season-long league.
Well, I know the question was who am I drafting, and I'm not trying to really say I'm drafting him because I'm not. But of the Bills receiver, that's the question I'm used to getting.
Your flag plant is MVS.
Well, I like Claypool. You want to pivot to Claypool?
You gotta go, man. I love it, man.
Who is yours?
To you in the world, Claypool and MVS.
Dave, is it Samuel for you?
It's Samuel for me, yeah.
So how many fantasy points is that? Is he playing running back like at Ohio State?
I think they're going to scheme him. His health is obviously a question. Keon Coleman to me is a big question. I mean, rookie, a team that needs to win now. Are they really going to throw a rookie out there? And
hilarious.
Yeah,
all that matters.
Is the answer fade the Bills? Kincaid is the answer.
The answer is still Curtis Samuel for me, but it's not like a pound on the table for him.
I'm just doing this for the clicks.
I love that.
Yours and mine.
I'll be making a reel with this whole interaction tomorrow. Just getting Bill's Twitter, Bill's Mafia, just on it. Just see what they think.
They know how I feel.
Okay. Mike Schopp, ladies and sir, thank you for joining the show. Best of luck for the rest of the draft. Find him, Deep End Fantasy Football Podcast. Terp, we're going to turn this thing right around. 2 more, not 1, 2. One was just on our show. Dan Williamson, content creator for Player Profiler, and making his return. He did a couple of drafts with us last year. Bradley Stalder, with the Player Profiler as well. Guys, you guys are drafting out of, I got to find my notes here, covered. Drafting out of the 2 spot.
Yeah, we're about to be on the clock here, so
please.
You're
Dan, I think we go picks. Some of those players.
At the
we
bottom?
go any
Still
of
can't believe you said MVS and Claypool.
Jeez, oh Pete, get that guy off the waves. No. We go some of those wide receivers that we have queued up, Dan, I think.
Man, you guys got a lot younger.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of the players towards the bottom because we're
really.
Yeah, I mean, we got to start putting some shots out there on those. I mean, we got a lot of shots at wide receiver right now.
I think the most bottom player. Once we get on the clock, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I'm just admiring. I'm admiring Brad's subtitle, RizGod Rankings Expert News Director.
This is true. I don't know if you saw recently, but one of my tweets had blown up, and Theo Greminger gave me the nickname RizGod, so that's just stuck.
Go with it.
Shout out to Theo. You know what? I'm fine with going Braylon Allen if you want to go there.
Buying into the hype.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think it's a good spot for him. Let's do it.
The depth chart for the Jets unofficially right now is Braylon Allen RB2.
No issues there.
Izzy Abanikanda has been playing behind Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen.
What a bummer. Really liked him coming out of college.
Now do we want to grab the guy we had at number 11?
I got to do some counting here.
It's the bottom guy in the queue.
I'm fine with that.
I
think we'll be able to get some of those other players at the top on the way around, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then our surprise mystery player, we have a special one in store for you guys.
I can't wait.
Oh, it's gonna be epic.
It's gonna blow your minds. It's gonna be amazing.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and stick the condom on here, though.
Oh, I'm very worried. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's it's definitely a condom pick, but you got to do what you got to do.
It certainly was a pick.
Yeah, I mean, just given the fact that we went 3 running backs early and then haven't addressed the position since. It makes a little bit of sense just to, have Garendo.
Running back
Mitchell.
who?
Yeah.
You guys definitely went against the grain with the running backs. You and Theo, taking those running backs early compared to some of these other teams who just went wide receiver and tight end crazy. It definitely puts you in a little tricky spot, but it's living dangerously, and I always like doing that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to do that, then you got to really kind of do what we did, which is have, pretty much a big wide receiver sandwich. You got your running backs at the top, running backs at the bottom, and, just a big old layer of wide receivers in the middle.
And your tight ends are just as good as anybody else. I mean, Freiermuth is being underdrafted right now compared to the field, and Tyler Conklin is a name that should be more popular because
right, exactly. I mean, Aaron Rodgers.
Obviously, Aaron Rodgers needs to be healthy, and that's a big if. Obviously, he's getting up there in age, but why is he, getting drafted lower than some of these other guys?
Reports out of Pittsburgh are that Pat Freiermuth is going to have the Kyle Pitts role in the Arthur Smith offense, which, we can feel some sort of way about it, but that's got to make you feel a little better than what he did last year.
We have a rule on this show. Never mention Arthur Smith's name. If you do, you get zapped.
There's 2 names you don't mention on the show. It's Arthur Smith and it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Those are the two no-go names that we just can't do. I will say Isaac Garendo.
By saying he's got the Pitts role, does that mean we should actually be drafting Darnell Washington?
You never know with that guy.
Mind games. It's mind games by Arthur Smith.
I don't know if Arthur Smith knows what mind games are.
He unintentionally mind games.
There's a lot of weapons on that offense that, if they're used right, and where they're being drafted, make a lot of sense. But
yep.
Can I just say one thing about your guys' Isaac Garendo pick? Isaac Garendo would have been way more fun like 2 years ago when the Niners didn't have CMC, and you're just like, ooh, what Shanahan random running back is going to be an RB1 this year, and then never again.
Right.
I want to ask you guys real quick, if you don't mind. We talked a bit about Jameson Williams. Terp is buying the hype. Clearly, you guys are buying the hype and the kind of this early preseason buzz that we're seeing from him. What kind of is behind your pick? You guys took him at the 8-11. Are you confident he finally figures it out? I mean, dude was a beast at Alabama, was a first-round pick. Obviously, his career between the injury, the suspension, really slow start, but he's getting a lot of positive press. So I want to kind of, if you guys could walk through that pick and your guys' discussion while making it.
Yeah, Bradley, why don't you start us out, and I'll clean up if there's anything left to clean up.
Sure. So this was, we were looking at some of the wide receivers at that spot, and the axis of the ceiling for other players in this range. Jameson Williams has one of the highest ceilings among all wide receivers. We were talking about this. We were on a phone call. That's how we were discussing it. And one of the things we were talking through was who's going to be the wide receiver 2 for Detroit. And it's clearly going to be Jameson Williams. Josh Reynolds has moved on to Denver. They did not address the position in the draft. And before the NFL draft, Dan Campbell came out and said that he expected a big offseason from Jameson Williams. They needed it to happen. And now we fast forward to OTAs, and Dan Campbell is describing Jameson Williams as a man on a mission, as the most improved player in OTAs. And do we believe the coach speak? And Coach Speak Index has Dan Campbell as one of the most trustworthy coaches in terms of depth chart and perception of players. And so when we look at how important is it to gain the trust of Dan Campbell, it is monumental. So for him to have this seismic shift, the needle has moved in terms of the Detroit Lions' attitude toward Jameson Williams. And not only has the word spoken, but also the organization has spoken in terms of not addressing the position in free agency, not addressing the position in the draft, and now just running out Jameson Williams. And yes, he's had some off and on days in OTAs, but they're going to live with that. They want him for the big plays. They want him for the explosion. And based on our team, like, that's what we need. We need big plays, and that's what Jameson Williams gives us access to.
Can't say any better myself.
I was about to say, ask Dan if he had anything to clean up there, but I didn't think so. You guys, back at the start of your guys' draft, Dan, you were in our chat kind of poking fun at kind of the age cliff that you guys started with. Is there any concern there? I mean, obviously McCaffrey is kind of, you got him at the 102. He's been, for the most part, a consensus 101. And then you go Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry. That's, you got some guys who have been fantasy stars for quite some time. So kind of just, was that at all in your guys kind of thinking that was going to happen, or did just kind of the draft kind of wound up that way and you're taking these aging stars?
No, we figured that probably Devontae Adams and Derrick Henry were both going to fall to us at the second, and we thought one of them might still be there coming around for the third. So it wasn't a surprise to us, and we did talk intentionally about those two players before the draft started and decided we were okay with them. So, and basically they're coming at a little bit of a value just because of their age. People are a little, Derrick Henry maybe not quite so much because of his age, it's more because this room really likes to puss yellow. But, I think Theo would have taken Derrick Henry had Barkley already been off the board, for example. Maybe
what was your...
that, but...
Well, when Abib took Breece Hall first, just scale of 1 to 10 for you, what was the surprise there? Or is this kind of a draft where you expect the unexpected because everyone's following their own ADP, and there's kind of, as Terpa said, ADP is just thrown out the window in a draft like this with 12 guys who are all, again, the best of the best. So what was your kind of surprise there? Just, it's not in the grand scheme of it, it's not the craziest thing, right? He's been going 103, 104, but how surprised were you guys?
I would say -3. Honestly, I really expected Abib probably would not go McCaffrey. Figured it could be Breece Hall, figured it could be CeeDee Lamb, figured it could be Bijan, but I didn't think it would be McCaffrey.
And I know you guys are going to come up here. I'm going to ask you guys each quick so far, because we want to get you guys so you can focus on your kind of last couple of sections of this draft. But so far this draft, again, out of the 2 spot, each individually, Brad, we'll start with you, then Dan. What's been your favorite pick that you guys have had so far?
Favorite pick? I would say I liked Derrick Henry in the 3rd round. I thought that was a good one. Didn't feel rushed. It was calculated. We like the upside that Henry gives us in the RB2 spot. And I think that, it's going to give us an edge over a lot of other running back 2s that may have, ceilings, but the floors are scarier. I don't think the floor is going to be very scary for a Derrick Henry when, the team is going to be very run heavy, when you're going to see a high, rush volume, but also that Baltimore, we expect to be in control of games. And so Derrick Henry's not going to get washed out of certain games. They're always going to be competitive, and so it's always going to be a Derrick Henry game in Baltimore.
And you guys are about to be on the clock here. We can kind of have you guys walk through your pick here, and then Dan, I want to hear your favorite pick, and then we'll get you guys out of here so you can focus on the last 2 rounds. But you guys are on the clock.
I have one more question before you guys leave.
And Bradley, let's if you haven't refreshed your queue, refresh your queue. I put somebody at the bottom I think would be a good pick, just because of he's good and the early look.
Un momento, por favor. Pulling it up on the app. Okay. Yeah.
You like it? All right.
Yeah.
There we go. Justin Tucker, pick his end.
Beautiful.
My
Get the
question is you
Baltimore
can answer it
correlation.
any time here. I just asked Mike the question, and he just threw me for a major loop. So I'm going to ask you guys the same question. Dan, I know your answer. Buffalo Bills, wide receivers. Dalton Kincaid does not count. Who was your flag plant?
For me, it's Curtis Samuel. I just feel like he can play on the inside. He can play on the outside. They're going to have him all over the field. This is a team that's really kind of starved for talent in the wide receiver room. So, Keon Coleman's going to be strictly on the outside. And, so Samuel can work in or out, whatever. But I expect him to be on the field a lot, and I expect Josh Allen to rely on him probably a lot too. All right, Bradley, what do we got here?
Do you want to pull the trigger or do you want to keep kicking the can, Dan?
I know
Let's
what you
kick
guys
the
are
can
going to do.
one more.
I'm pretty convinced I know the answer.
All right. So who do you want to go instead?
I like the first guy in our queue. I also like the last guy in our queue.
All right. Do you want to just take the last guy?
Yeah, let's do it. We'll cause some controversy.
Is
Sure,
the last
we'll do it
guy
over the clock.
Taysom Hill?
Oh God.
Never a doubt there.
Oh,
I-
man.
Right when you guys said you're going to just started thinking, and my brain actually works once in a while that
Bradley's Twitter, Bradley's X account has been giving me some like war flashbacks.
I laugh at every second of it.
Yeah. So this is
You're not on the front lines, Terp.
I know I'm not.
You
I'm not
can
on any
laugh at
lines,
it.
and that's why I love it.
Yeah. So I think at this point we might actually want to hope that he switches position to, I don't know, running back or tight end.
You can switch to any position, and that'd be great for you guys right now.
Right. Exactly. So
that's the music, guys. That's the music playing them off. No.
Everybody can have their own opinion about that, but
That's what makes it the best.
Yep. You gotta,
Look, the reality is if he is a tight end, he instantly, I think, goes in round
Much
10,
higher.
round 11 in
Easily.
this type of format. And so, there's certain, like, we want people who are watching this to understand that in a variety of formats, whether you play on FFPC or other places, the reality is that Taysom Hill can, in some formats, be very much of a cheat code. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to be fighting for him when it becomes obvious. We want to be ahead of the curve, and that's the type of move that we make here at the end of the draft.
I agree.
No, the reasoning is sound. I think it's really good for the people who are watching to
Brad, I still need your
understand
answer on
context.
the flag plant for the Buffalo Bills.
Oh,
receiver.
yeah.
It's the same as Dan. Curtis Samuel was a priority free agent, is 18 to 20% target share type of player, 4.2, 4.3 speed, a player that can be used all throughout the formation. I know Dan touched on that already, but he's going to fit so much better, and this wide receiver core is going to be very flat, and in terms of target share, I don't think that you're going to see another 30% target share guy from this group. So Curtis Samuel is a guy who can break off big plays. He was used in the red zone last year with Washington, and we've seen top 24 seasons from him in the past. So, this is trusting that the Bills are going to use him, and Josh Allen's going to get the ball to him.
Dan Williamson, Bradley Stalder from Player Profiler. You can follow them on X for Dan at Overhyped Sleeper. That's Sleeper with no E. And then at FF Stalder for Bradley. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and good luck for your last couple rounds.
Thanks, Aidan. Thanks, Dave.
Good luck, guys.
And, we're calling on our closer. Only 2 rounds left, but I think we're going to close out our show kind of discussing kind of the draft as a whole with him. He is with Sharp Football Analysis. You could follow him at Twitter X at BestBallNFL. Todd Burrows, drafting out of the number 4 spot. Todd, my first question, I'm not even going to wait for it. You took my guy, Ray Davis, in the 10th round. You reached on him a bit. Please hype up Ray Davis some more, because I've done it enough.
Nobody loves Kentucky players more than Aidan.
Clearly, you're a believer.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Of course.
All right. So, I mean, it tied into my overall draft strategy. So my overall draft strategy was to get either Bijan or Breece Hall to start, and then really load up. I felt like I could get a tight end coming back. Once I did that, then it was time to pound wide receiver. Malik Neighbors, it was a gut feeling when I was on the clock that he could be a league winner. What if the Giants offense isn't so bad? So when I finally started taking running backs, I know from our dyno that Theo liked Ray Davis, and he was my guy, right? He was my favorite. Him and Marshawn Lloyd were my two favorite tapes. And then Theo got me back on Marshawn Lloyd on the way back, you bastard. So Ray Davis is a guy who has all the skills. He can run, he can block, he can catch. And what I'm looking for is guys who can, I need guys who I feel are going to have a role that I can start every week, because, I had Bijan and I had Jaylen Warren. So I just felt that Ray Davis had a role. So just take him when you get a chance. But he's the guy that I'm very high on.
You also have Gus Edwards, who, should have a pretty strong role to start off the season at least. I mean,
that was Marshawn Lloyd was gone, so I decided, because this team is based on Bijan, the tight end, and a bunch of good running backs. So in my running back room, I want different archetypes. I want a bunch of high upside guys mixed with some guys who I can count on to start. And I felt like Gus should start the season as the lead back, and that'll give me time to try and, if I don't draft my running back 2 for the full season, it gives me more time to figure it out. That the plan was to punt running back 2, take Bijan, have a guy who could, with legendary upside in the round 1, and then push and really get a bunch of wide receivers to make up for what I missed by not getting Chase there. And so that was the strategy.
Todd, we have a question in the chat for you from Dominic Gazzetti. And you mentioned him, and you kind of said you had a gut feeling you could see him being a league winner. He wants just if you could expound upon your thoughts on that Malik Neighbors pick that you took, 4th pick in the 3rd round.
Well, I feel that he's going to have a floor. I feel that he is, this whole thought that the Giants aren't going to be good. I mean, they weren't that bad, with a horrible quarterback, a horrible offensive line, and no stud wide receiver. So I just feel like he's going to have a floor, and I think he'll have a ceiling as well. It was hard to pass on Mike Evans there, and it was hard to pass on Ayuk. But ultimately, my gut started screaming at me, take Neighbors, and I decided to listen to my gut.
Todd, you also we've talked about Gus Edwards and Ray Davis. I'm just going to hop in there. You took 4 running backs in a row. You also took Tyron Tracy, but Rico Dowdle. You took 3 guys. I think, as Turf said, Gus Edwards by no means the sexiest pick. You kind of mentioned that was kind of slotted in Marshawn Lloyd, and it gets sniped by Theo. But Gus Edwards you would think he kind of has a built-in floor, assuming that he's healthy there in with the Chargers. And then Rico Dowdle could be the same, right? I mean, you have the corpse of Ezekiel Elliott there? Can you kind of talk to me about the upside?
He's an annoying corpse, but he's still there.
Dowdle is getting the opposite of steam right now. Mm-hmm. People are just figuring that he's not that good. But I think he's the best that's there right now.
I agree.
And unless that changes, and I thought about him when I took Gus Edwards, and so when he fell back to me, it was a pretty easy pick. Again, the goal was to put all different types of running backs to go with Bijan. I think Jaylen Warren is the guy who has the upside and the floor, right? There might be weeks where he only gives you 5 points, but Jaylen Warren is just so hyper efficient that I really felt like he was a great pick. And then you add to that, I lost my train of thought because I was on the clock. But there was other running backs I liked more. I thought about Donta Foreman a few rounds earlier, but I feel like between Dowdle, Edwards, and Warren and Davis, I should have a second running back to start every week. Mm-hmm. Davis also gives me upside. Gus and Dowdle both could surprise. Tyrone Tracy is that young guy with upside if Singletary goes down. And Donta Foreman might be the best running back in Cleveland behind a great offensive line. He's a push the pile guy. I feel, really good about my team. And then I came back and got 2 upside young wide receivers, something my good friend and partner at times, what's his name right now?
Your multitasking is impressive.
Yeah,
drafting, you're on air and trying to remember all this.
He's my Indian friend. God, Terp, who am I thinking of?
Bip Lab.
Bip. Yeah, Bip. Thank you. Bip always talks about how underappreciated the rookie wide receivers are late because of the frenzy to get the running backs in that range. I'm super high on Javon Baker. I feel that Troy Franklin was my 4th wide receiver tape. He had a terrible combine, but supposedly he was sick. He got reunited with his college quarterback. You've got Sean Payton, who, again, a lot of people are down on Sean Payton, but what if he doesn't suck, right? So, I feel like I've got a lot of young upside on this team between Neighbors, Baker, Franklin, Tyrone Tracy, and my core is pretty young as well. And Anthony Richardson could give me a ton of points every week with Bijan. So that's my thoughts.
Last year you couldn't find a bigger Christian Watson fan than Dave Terpoilli. Obviously, did not work out. He's on him again this year. Specifically, I know obviously this is season long managed, but in best ball, I know Terpoilli.
I'm interrupting real quick. And I remember correctly, you weren't that high on Christian Watson last year.
I was not.
But you take him,
but he was also going in the 4th, 5th round.
Way more expensive.
Yeah.
Right. So the thought with that was I had just taken Deontay Johnson, who was more of a floor guy. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to look. We're not only trying to win this league, we're trying to win $1 million. Yep, right. And Christian Watson has that profile. So I take a ton of Dontavian Wicks, and I mentioned this in the pre-segment with Balky that one of my most owned players is Dontavian Wicks. But what if Watson? Again, I love these what if questions, right? You want a few what if questions on your team. What if Watson stays healthy? Well, when he was healthy, he was the clear number 1.
He was a league winner.
if you think that's one of the best offenses in football, and he might be the number 1 guy, all he has to do is stay healthy. Well, you know what? I was willing to take that shot. I think I got sniped there. No, I didn't get sniped. I would have taken Godwin if he had made it a few more picks, but when he didn't, I thought that Watson paired nicely with the wide receivers that I had.
Todd, you had mentioned your interest in the kind of the value of the rookie receivers late in the draft. So you took Christian Watson over just the next couple picks. You looked at Rome Odunze, Ladd McConkey. Was there any consideration for kind of taking one of those rookies earlier, or were you kind of always confident on targeting one of the rookie receivers?
I got my favorite rookie wide receiver. I mean, I love Harrison too, but he was never going to be there for me.
Okay.
So I got 3 of my 4 favorite wide receivers in this class on my team. Javon Baker, Troy Franklin,
And Neighbors.
Malik Neighbors. So I'm not a Lad McConkey guy. And I think that the assumption that he's going to be the number one guy at his ADP on an offense that might lean run heavy. Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I started taking a little bit of Lad McConkey in drafts where I felt like I could get Herbert as my number 2 in best ball, but I did not. I'm not as high on him as some people.
I have a question, and you talked about the Browns' backfield with Foreman and how you think he's the best there. This is probably more of a best ball question because that's predominantly more than where you play. Where do you stand on guys like Nick Chubb and then obviously in Minnesota, TJ Hawkinson when it comes to their injuries? Where they're being drafted. Do you think that where they're being drafted is fair, or should they be getting drafted lower? I mean, obviously there's a big risk with both players, and in best ball, I mean, you're going to take a 0 for a really long time on both players.
I thought about taking Ford with Foreman here because I think they're going to be, I mean, Nick Chubb is one of those lottery tickets, but he had a major knee injury.
Yeah.
So, am I ignoring Nick Chubb completely? No, but we've just seen how these major knee and he again, Donta Foreman right now is the best value, so that's who I'm going to be taking. I think I was talking to Billy Musio the other day, and we don't talk as much as we used to, but I said, who I like right now is Foreman, and he goes, "You with Donta Foreman," and it's true though. I mean, we've seen Donta Foreman come in and be really effective,
very productive.
Yeah, and so he's a free square, and especially
costs you nothing.
Look, this is a waiver draft. If 3 of those 7 running backs hit to go, I mean, 3 of the 6 besides Bijan give me good performance, and I didn't screw up the other part of my draft. I mean, talk about an underrated part of my draft. Dallas Goedert, last year was going way. I mean, Freiermuth and Hawkinson both going before Dallas Goedert. No, thank you. So, I feel like I've got a really good team with a lot of ceiling, a lot of upside. And, I'm just going to have to piece together running back 2. And I tried to put myself in the best position to do.
Todd, one quick question for you, and then we'll get you out. You can enjoy the rest of your night. You were quick in the chat when I think Theo was on. He said, I think Todd might take Lamar Jackson. You instantly drafted Anthony Richardson, hopped in the chat, said, nope, Richardson was always the pick. It was that from the get-go, you never even considered Lamar. What is with Anthony Richardson? Me and Terp both said it here on stream. He has QB1
I mean,
potential.
Anthony Richardson averaged 9 fantasy points a game more than any other quarterback last year. I love the floor of a running quarterback, and Lamar has started to run less. And now you've got Derrick Henry near the goal line. So, look, Lamar's a great quarterback. He's a winning quarterback, but is he a winning fantasy quarterback this year? And I felt like I could get a backup, and I did. I got Aaron Rodgers late, who is more of your stable. But Aaron Rodgers has upside, right? With Breece Hall and with Garrett Wilson. So I just feel like, look, again, I wanted to go for it. I think
you did.
I really wanted, what Pat Crane calls legendary upside. And when you look at a team with Bijan, Mark Andrews, Malik Neighbors, DK Metcalf, and Anthony Richardson in the first 5 rounds, I feel each of them have the potential to give you a score during a week that no one can match. Now, maybe you could argue Neighbors might not be able to, but and then I've got solid with Deontay Johnson, and then, again, right back to the Christian Watson pick. So I did not want to be timid. I wanted to be very aggressive in this draft, but I also think I drafted really good players. So I think there's more floor here than, the plenty of floor here. But I think the thank you, Stephanie Miller. I really feel like that I couldn't be more happy with my draft.
I think you did very well. You're right up there with Team 12, in my opinion, as one of the best drafts.
Yeah, and Team 12, I was going to take Hollywood. That was the guy I would have taken instead of Watson. Hollywood was the one I wanted. I knew there was somebody, and Hollywood was the guy I wanted, and he just didn't make it back to me.
Todd Burrows, ladies and gentlemen. Todd, thank you so much for joining us. You can find all of his work at Best Ball NFL. Good luck on the rest of your fantasy season, sir.
Thank you guys so much, as always, for having me. Pleasure to be on.
See you, bud.
Terp, we got one more guest. He was, I mean, granted, he was a fan, yes, but last year, I believe on this very stream, he was the first one to tell us that the Houston Texans had a bunch of, untapped potential. He is the 2019 and 2020 FFPC
still crazy to say
$350 championship winner. You can find some of his rationale, some of his processes at the First and 15 podcast. Abib Agbatoba, ladies and gentlemen. Out of the first spot today,
dressed to impress.
Dressed to impress. Me and Terp were, I wouldn't say surprised. Dan Williamson gave it a -3 out of 10, his surprise level, when you took Breece Hall first overall. So you got Breece Hall first overall. I mean, it's, again, I'm a big Breece Hall guy. I know Terp is. So to us, it's go get your guy time. Come on. So Breece Hall over McCaffrey, what you're trying to sell the people on that. What's the reasoning behind there?
I mean, we literally just put out a podcast, the title is First Round Doesn't Matter. So, I mean, there was a couple things that kind of went into this pick. One, I was not a Breece Hall guy coming out, as far as sort of kind of his draft prospect. He was really touted as sort of kind of a generational type player. And I was just kind of on the fence about whether or not that was the case. He was obviously good, put up, tremendous combine numbers, was highly productive at the collegiate level, but just something, just wasn't quite, on it. And then obviously he suffered the ACL injury. But watching him at the end of last year, I mean, there's just something about this player that is so explosive, and he's a do-it-all type back. And if he gets the volume, I think sky is the absolute limit. So, this is not a slight on C-Mac. I'm not a believer in the injury-prone label or trying to guess, if a guy's injury or using that as the basis on why I made a pick. That being said, there's one situation where, I'm a little bit more cautious, and that's just based on historical data. And that's, at these, positional players, especially at the running back position, who finishes number one the season before is probably unlikely to repeat. We had kind of a run of LaDainian Tomlinson, and then maybe there was one or two other backs which might have been CMC. But I think in this day and age, I just think it's so hard to do. And when you finish number one, essentially what that means is that you made it through the entire season. Okay, so which means that you probably had a significant workload to allow you to accrue that number one overall position in those total fantasy points. But then you look at C-Mac as well, with the addition of the playoff weeks and playing into the Super Bowl, that's a heavy workload. And it's not so much, again, that I'm, seeing or projecting any type of injury with C-Mac, but I do like what the Jets have done, beefing up the O-line. Ideally, we have a healthy Rodgers, but if Rodgers goes down, at least we have somewhat of a competent backup in Tyrod Taylor. They have other weapons there now. I'm not a big believer in, again, you add in a player, so that takes away from a player. I like that they added in Mike Williams. I like that he's coming off an ACL. So at the very least, he's a threat, but not a threat to have a monstrous type season coming off an injury like that. You obviously have Garrett Wilson. You have the rookie Xavier Legette. Sorry, not Xavier Legette, but the rookie
Malachi Corley.
Yeah, Malachi Corley. And then even someone like a Tyler Conklin. So I think the offense is competent enough. I mean, you look at what C-Mac did. I think he was top 5 overall, including quarterback scoring in this format last year. And so C-Mac was able to accomplish that on a team with Debo, with Brandon Ayuk, with George Kittle. So I don't think, having competition or, adding in players takes away from Breece Hall. So essentially he's a guy on the ascend. He's 1 year removed from the ACL. And, it's a live draft. I had just spoken about how he's my number one overall ranked player. I said, why not? Next time I get the
you
one,
got to do it. You can't say he's going to be your number one guy and not take him.
putting your money where your mouth is. I respect it. No, the thing is, as you said, is it's also I think their added weapons and Rodgers being healthy is only going to help Breece Hall. Breece Hall was the only guy there, right? It was him. They had no threat of throwing the ball. It was just loaded boxes against him, and he was still producing. I think that's only his situation is only going to improve, and he already was a top 5 running back last year. People were in the chat were talking, oh, what's Team 1 doing with the quarterback? Is Team 1 just fading quarterback? Me and Terp have said over and over again, quarterback is so deep this year. You can wait till the double-digit rounds. You go Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson. Terp, I know you're in on Trevor Lawrence. Can you just talk me through, was that a coming into the draft, I'm going to be comfortable waiting, or just the draft played out, you're like, yeah, I'm just going to keep pushing quarterback knowing that these names were coming who are going to be more than fine during the season?
Yeah, I mean, so number one, and in these types of high-stake drafts with these types of guys, they typically wait on quarterbacks anyway. And I was kind of surprised to see the run at quarterback, in the 5th and 6th round. But I also knew that they weren't going to double up on quarterbacks early. And like you said, quarterback is exceptionally deep. So to me, I'm okay with taking the gamble of getting 2 and 3 quarterbacks. I have no issue grabbing multiple quarterbacks. I know that's sort of kind of a faux pas, and that's sort of kind of, the thing that, gets talked about. But when I'm, dedicating, 13th, 14th, and 16th round draft capital, to really lock up that position that's likely to score me the most points on a week-to-week basis, I'm more than happy to do that. And that allows me to sort of kind of take a lot more dart throws in those mid-rounds that they, the perceived high upside guys. But if Jaden Daniels had made it back to me in the 10th round, I definitely would have taken him there. But once he went off the board, I knew I could wait. I knew Watson was going to go super late. I think people forget that even as bad as he was last year, he was still very, very much serviceable. Trevor Lawrence, like you said, he was hurt for quite a bit last year. And then you got Brock Purdy, who's steady and Eddie. So my thought process with waiting at QB again is loading up on all of those other skill positions. But my thought process is that between these 3, and maybe I add one later or drop one of these guys, but between these 3, I'm making the right start-sit decisions on a week-to-week basis. Who are they going up against, pass defense-wise? What's the Vegas point total? And so between my combination of hopefully correct starts from week 1 through 17, when I match that up against someone who's just started, Lamar Jackson the entire year, someone who started Patrick Mahomes the entire year, what I'd like to see is that my overall point total for my starting QB is at least equal, if not greater. So I just feel like I give myself much more of a chance. And this is just something that I've done throughout the years. I mean, I did it with Lamar, I can't remember the last quarterback, but Jordan Love last year. I mean, there are so many late round quarterbacks that can hit. And like you said, it's just a deep position.
I think Trevor Lawrence is the one who just constantly surprises me personally. Just that's a guy who I think
he had up so much last year.
He had every injury in the book last year. That ankle, knee.
Don't forget the receivers who can't catch the ball.
Calvin Ridley cost that man so many points last year, just drop touchdown after drop touchdown. So I love the Trevor Lawrence pick in particular.
And I'm betting on a little bit of TD regression. I don't know the numbers. I'm not really an analytics or metric person. Just like you said, watching the games, you saw quite a bit of drops, including in the actual end zone. And ETN scored a ton of rushing touchdowns. So, we see these kind of ebb and flows. We see these things shift from time to time. So I could easily see this year Trevor Lawrence just sort of kind of, going off. And then Christian Kirk is one of my favorite players this year to draft. So, it's an easy pairing for me. Not that you have to,
another guy who's healthy.
You said what?
Another guy who's healthy who wasn't healthy last year.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Real quick, your tight end situation. So TJ Hawkinson coming off an ACL likely seems like a pup candidate. Luke Musgrave was banged up. We have a comment or question, I should say, from the chat, which is, are you confident in Luke Musgrave being the number 1? Because Tucker Kraft did look good when Musgrave went down last year. Is there any concern there with that Packers tight end room?
No, not at all. I think, to me, I think Kraft is more of the blocking tight end, and Luke Musgrave. He was actually schemed open. We saw a number of downfield throws, some that were missed by Jordan Love, especially earlier in the season. So I think, we're all taking darts at this Green Bay passing game, and I think we're focused in on the wide receivers, and rightfully so. They're a very, very talented group. But Luke Musgrave, when healthy last year, I think was very, very effective. And for me, I don't know. I like waiting at tight end. This is actually the one year where I didn't want to wait. So I was very shocked and surprised to see, McBride, Kincaid, and Mark Andrews not make it back to me. But at that point, I didn't feel like I wanted to reach for a tight end. So if maybe someone had fallen to me a little bit past ADP or at ADP, maybe, but I'm fine waiting. I think, when you wait at tight end or really any position that you're deficient in, you're a lot more aggressive on the free agency side. And so one of my favorite ads last year was Trey McBride. Whether I drafted it, after the first couple of weeks, everyone dropped him. And I knew on teams where I needed that playoff upside in the tourney weeks that I needed a high upside guy. So I just added him across the board. I just added him anywhere I could, and I just kept him on the roster because I knew, he's in a position where there was an older tight end in Zach Ertz who had been injured fairly often, and there was a void of, really, threat at the receiver position. So it was kind of one of those, situations where, it was open season. And that's kind of what I did with TJ Hawkinson here as well. Obviously, JJ's there, but I don't need TJ Hawkinson to be there. I don't need a top 5 tight end for the first 5, maybe even 10 weeks of the season. What I need is someone who can produce in that last, in the last 3 weeks, the money weeks, and potentially during the playoffs. So, and then the Kroll pick at the end, I don't think gets enough love. At some point, I think I'm going to raise his ADP at some point. But that's a guy that is already getting a little bit of buzz at camp.
The buzz is forming.
Yeah, and we've all been on Dulcich, but that regime did not draft Dulcich. One thing I like to do is I like to actually not read the blurbs, but hear the coaches talk about these players, because there's just there's a tell that each coach has. Sometimes you can tell it's like just sort of kind of a monotone speech. They're just throwing out the generic phrases, and then sometimes their eyes get really excited or they get really happy. And so hearing the coaching staff talk about Kroll, and he was kind of making a little bit of a buzz last year. So again, a dart throw that, you try to give yourself as many chances as you can at finding, that high-end upside tight end, especially if you wait in a draft like this.
The dictionary definition of coach speak that they'll show everyone in school is Sean McVay last year with Cam Akers and then Kyren Williams. It was just
seriously.
All right.
Exactly.
He hates Cam Akers and he loves Kyren Williams.
Exactly.
We're going to ask you one more question because I don't know if you heard me when we were calling you, but last year on this very stream, I think it was in late May, you were telling us hey guys, don't sleep on my Texans. They're going to be, and we're like, okay, sure, man. But you were right. You knew what you were talking about. That's why you've won 2 $350 championships. And obviously that your team the best. So we want to ask, we've been talking about it our last couple of shows, and we're Terp has settled on Tank Dell because he's the cheapest. Mm-hmm. You're planting your flag. You're taking one of the Texans' big 3 at receiver. They go 3rd, 4th, 5th round this draft. Who are you taking?
Yeah. Man, honestly, probably neither. I think what I'll do is I'll force myself to have a little bit of both. This is kind of more of a broader type question. I mean, I think we just, we're in a time and a period of the NFL where there are just so many options. Passing is at an historical high. So there's just a lot more receiving options. So it makes it a lot more difficult to know who's going to go off on a week-to-week basis. And the NFL season, as we all know, is a major gauntlet. So I would just kind of look and, look what happened last year at the Texans. That's the perfect example, not just for the Texans, but also for the Green Bay Packers and all these other teams where there's multiple wide receiving options, and we're having these intense debates about who should go where and who should go where. Sometimes there's an obvious wide receiver, but sometimes they are so close together. And when you look at the Texans last year, Tank Dell went down. So there was a period in time where Nico just flourished. Mm-hmm. Nico went down. So there was a point in time where Tank Dell just flourished. And then both of them went down. And then there was a time when Noah Brown flourished. And then Schultz came out of nowhere. So you have, I think just kind of during the season, if you believe in a guy's talent and he's in a good situation and you're just not quite sure if he's going to get the ball, draft him. Unless you have somebody higher. Because at some point in the season, it's probably going to come around where he's going to be so valuable for you. And all we're all hoping and praying, and it's all kind of a random guess, is that that time period happens through weeks 15 and 17. And that's the case in redraft, and that's the case in best ball. So yeah, I'm probably, if I had to answer the question, I'm probably taking Tank Dell because he is the latest to go. I'm definitely, in lockstep with that logic. But in all honesty, as a volume drafter, I got to make sure that I get, at least, a few shares of all of these guys, because you don't know who's going to show up when you most need it.
That's a perfect way to end our stream, on that uplifting note about just belief and trusting the Texans receiver room. Abib Agatoba, ladies and gentlemen. You can follow him at Skywalker2000 on X and the First and 15 podcast. Thank you, sir. Good luck with the rest of your draft.
Good luck.
Terp, that's going to do it for us. Another highly successful draft coverage. We'll be back this Tuesday. We're still determining the exact time. That will get posted no later than tomorrow afternoon. But our weekly coverage of the Fantasy Pros Championship every Tuesday from June, July, August into that first week of September, that kicks off in just a couple of days. So look out for that. We'll have more best ball tournament drafts coming up. Terp, before we know it, it's going to be Pros v. Joes. And then I believe main event is about a month away from our
first main event. Slow drafts will start, and then
slow draft
in Vegas soon.
June
I just
1st.
booked my hotel for Vegas today, so I'm set. Booked my flight this week, and yeah, it's crazy how feels weird.
It goes like that. I know it's almost 10 p.m. here on the East Coast. I know not a ton of people are watching. For those who did miss it, we made an announcement on our social, I believe emails went out about the Friday game, that there will be no drafts in Vegas or online at the FFP's platform during the Eagles-Packers game. So I know there were some people asking in the chat last week during our best ball coverage about that.
There will be drafts after the game and before the game. I believe it. I saw today when I was looking to secure one of my slots. 1:30 is the latest. Is the latest before the game, and then there's one at 9:00 after the game. So plenty of different options. All the other options in the morning are still there, and obviously Saturday drafts, plenty of those. Thursday drafts. I mean, they'll have drafts pretty much it's just not the 6:00 slot that it usually is. So because of the Eagles game when they play the Packers and hopefully destroy them, and me and Balky and the rest of them Packers homers, we'll have some fun.
For sure. And if at any point you're looking to get into a draft and you haven't yet played on the FFPC, just use code YouTube25. You'll get $25 off your first team. You can play in the Fantasy Pros Championship, $1 million on the line, over $6 million total in the prize pool. Again, if you're going to try and wait, you want to get on one of these live coverages. We're going to open one up for next Tuesday, probably around, I believe, 8:30 p.m. is what we're targeting. So look out for that. Draft coverage is going to be popping off pretty much now every week for the rest of the summer. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please like, subscribe, and we will see you guys next Tuesday.
See you guys.